An ex-Bungie dev emailed me about why Cortana is actually naked. I talked about this before and others speculating on why she is, 343 and Bungie speculating, but now we have details from the actual creator of Cortana on one of Halo's biggest mysteries ever. Why is Cortana naked? This is a video you're not going to want to miss. Let's go ahead and get into it. In January of 2019, I uploaded a video named "Why is Cortana Naked in Halo?" Well, not long after that, I received an email by someone claiming to be the creator of Cortana, and after speaking to him extensively these past few days actually, I got some information that basically verifies him, although there is still wiggle room where things could be, potentially not true, so keep your mind open. And not only that, comes off as a little defensive, and explains to me exactly why Cortana is naked with some interesting things. So one thing I did find interesting about this person so far is that he only worked on Halo 1, at least according to his IMDb, and for whatever reason, left, never to return to Halo ever again. And I couldn't find anything regarding his email, his social media, or even his past at all. It seems like he is a very private guy and doesn't like being on the spotlight, so I plan to respect that. But basically, everything adds up with the official sources and his personality, so I'm leaning that this is, in fact, the person that created Cortana. His email says, "My name is, and I'm the one who created the original Cortana concept art, model, textures, and shaders. I worked at Bungie up a few months ago before Halo shipped, left for personal reasons that had nothing to do with Bungie, and for the record, Cortana is not naked, and is not a reflection of how I see women." So I think here he's referring to the common belief by fans, something that I brought up in the video, that she was basically created to merely have appeal to male gamers because, she's a naked woman. And he continues to say, "That's a messed up thing to say about somebody. I can give you more info about the reasons behind her appearance." So it's normal for someone in his position to be kind of offended and flustered by, someone saying that he might be sexist or something of the like, because he created basically a female companion that was completely nude. So I think he's referring to actually a specific comment that I mentioned that was made back in 2003, that when former Bungie employee McLeese talked about this topic and said, "It seems that video game studios are mainly made up of a bunch of guys, and the women in their games are perhaps portrayed in the way they themselves see women." Here, the same 3D artist who wanted to not portray women as sex objects to be ogled over and drooled over, coincidentally model Konoko and Cortana. Never mind that Cortana was basically a naked hologram. For her action figure, it was important that she didn't look too young, as she did in the game, so she became a little buxom. Buxom basically means thick and curvy. I requested her to not be as buxom, but somehow the sculptor just didn't want to make that change. We ran out of time, and there we go. Before we read more emails, we have to ask a very important question, which is she even naked or nude? Since she's an AI, as O'Connor said, she's effectively just wearing a holographic body stocking. But as he basically said, I'm paraphrasing, we basically backed them into a corner. So I emailed him back saying, yeah, I'd be interested in hearing all that, honestly, and invited him to do an audio interview over Discord or Skype, and he sort of just ignored me and instead sent me a huge wall of text. Now again, this makes sense for someone who values their privacy and stays out of the spotlight, has no social media whatsoever. So in his second email, he explains Cortana's design here. He says, "The hologram size was problematic. It always reminded me of a transmission, Princess Leia from R2-D2, rather than a presence. I decided if she was the ship's computer, more or less, then she's made of data. So I went with a ghost made up of data, which doesn't read so well from far away, so I mixed a circuit board style for a computer aspect and a little bit of tribal tattoo for the losing control aspect. I never thought about this as something that would need a costume or clothes. That seemed ridiculous that an AI would even consider. What should I wear today?" I can only speak to the first Cortana in Halo CE Xbox, which is 99.8% of what I authored. Eye color changed after I left, but that's about it. but I can say that there weren't any other cooks involved, and I just had to run my iterations by some folks for approval. The spec for Cortana was vague. There was no pre-existing concept art. Ideas that were floated my way were either too human or too robotic. Clothed and costume concepts gave an impression that it was a broadcast transmission from a real person who was far away. I was given parameters to work with. Her size was small like a doll, female because of the backstory, and hologram. Although her origins were from the backstory brain upload, etc., etc., she wasn't the same person and not human. I never thought of the character as being human, but more like an entity or digital ghost or spirit that evolved in its own directions. And in the story has a second state. After it connects to the rings, computer Cortana goes a bit crazy. Basically, giving her clothes made her look too human, as if she was a broadcast of someone far, far away. But you could say that her being naked looks like a broadcast of someone being naked far, far away. Now, I had a problem with this reasoning until I looked at Roland and Serena, for example, whom at first glance could look like a simple hologram transmission of a real person, when in fact they're both AI sentient beings. But again, there's many things to counter this confusion, like the visuals, the chip, dialogue, and also, of course, the visual design of the AI. And that is where he came in, right? To make it very easy to look at this character right away and know that she's not human. If you look at Cortana from Halo 1, it's actually immediately clear that she is not human, and perhaps that is the best approach to being given the task of creating a character like this. He also wrote to me saying, I also made deliberate decisions to keep Cortana very far from fully opaque. The dark circuit pattern is actually empty, fully transparent except for the data streams that flow all over the contour. About 40% of her body is not there, it's completely transparent, just the data shader moving across the surface like a projection. I was concerned about the silhouette implying forms that had Cortana not confused with a robot or a person. As far as I could tell, the only reason Cortana would need a visual representation would be to empathize communication through body language and to visually see the rampancy. So that last part is actually very interesting. He mentions rampancy and how basically Bungie had already started acting on that as far back as Halo 1. So it makes me feel a little bit better about Halo 4 and basically the state of Halo 5 and the Halo story, that all of this was planned and that it was evolved into something really cool all the way back since Halo 1. But he then shared me a link about the difference between being nude and naked. And honestly, this is where I kind of cracked up because frankly, they basically mean the same thing. It feels like a game of words and English, playing with the English language, because naked and nude, mostly they have subjective uses, more or less. They're the same word though, especially when you look up the word definitions on Google, with basically naked being without clothes and nude means wearing no clothes. Now, I don't have anything against this guy. In fact, I'm actually leaning in his defense, which I'll talk more about soon. But just because an animal doesn't wear clothes normally doesn't mean that it's not naked or nude. Same thing with a human-like hologram AI. Basically, you could say everything is nude. Just because an animal doesn't wear clothes doesn't mean that it's not naked or nude. Yeah, I should move on, but this subject has just got me kind of laughing. His final email starts off as a response from me asking permission to publish these and put them in a video, in which he talks about the things that he would like for me to focus on in the video and wouldn't like any attention for this, which is totally fair. In no way at all am I judging or SJWing this guy at all, because he's totally in the clear with me, I hope with you too as well, and totally deserves our respect. He created one of the coolest characters in gaming. And I believe the saying Cortana was designed to just be something oogled at is a bit of a reach. And I don't know why Bungie said that, but then proceeded to continue to go down the path of having a naked blue chick as one of their main characters and not put some clothing on her. Character perimeters is just as guilty as him, if at all. One thing I find very frustrating about our culture nowadays is that we, for 10 or 20, 30, 40 years, we didn't find a problem with something, for example, Cortana being naked, but then all of a sudden, SJW people that are now becoming very cultured, you could say, in our modern culture of canceling things, are now saying that Cortana is wrong. Where were you 10 or 20 years ago when she was crafted for the first time? You weren't there because it wasn't mainstream, and now it's mainstream, everyone has a problem with it, and I think that's stupid. Especially stupid if we start blaming the creator and saying that there's something wrong with his design when we didn't find anything wrong with it and didn't speak up 20 years ago. But I don't think she's just something to be oogled at, because honestly, the Cortana in Halo 1 is not attractive looking at all. I never really looked at her and was like, ooh, yeah, something to oogle at, right? I mean, she just doesn't look attractive to me. I mean, she has these red eyes, she has this green body where half of it isn't even showing, and it doesn't look that great to me. In addition, she's probably one of the most likable and well-written characters in the franchise, even back in Halo 1, and she was well designed too. So anyone that's saying that Cortana is a sexist figure, I mean, seriously, you know, I don't know what to say to that. Although on the flip side, in 2001, when Cortana was created, there wasn't many female gamers, and considering Halo had running, gunning, action, a big green tankish soldier that would kill aliens and have big explosions, and naked blue chick as your companion, it's really hard to believe that she wasn't in some way designed to bait male gamers, which by the way is sort of insulting to male gamers as well, but I'm just being honest. But as I said last time, Bungie and 343 should have just owned it. They should own it now, because at the very least, it was done tastefully and creatively, especially with Halo 1's design. Half of her body wasn't even there, and she wasn't really that attractive, to be honest, in my opinion anyway, and I know it's a very subjective opinion, but also, she was done like in a very special way that made her look very cyberonic, and his claims actually make sense. Cortana only gets more thick in further iterations of the games. Though this may simply be a consequence of the graphics getting better with games, that initial design was probably the closest to what Cortana maybe should have been in for the rest of the series, although I certainly love the later designs. But we finally see Cortana put on her own version of clothes, which actually looks more like Forerunner armor, but it's funny that 343 has kind of finally put an end to this, and I wonder if she will be wearing clothes if she does come back to the good side and gets off her high horse of the mantle. Guys, thank you again so much for watching this video. If you want to watch the original video beyond this person's explanation here, then I certainly suggest go watching that. Here's a link, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you so much for watching. Peace.